Hello everyone and welcome to this live program. It's a special program on Channels Television. I'm Shenwa Kimbaloye in Lagos.
And in Abuja, the nation's capital, I am Terry Ikumi.
This is a hybrid televised town hall session organized by Policy and Legal Advocacy Center PLAC in collaboration with Channels Television. And this program is dedicated to discussing the problems of the Nigerian policing system and how to fix them. We have discussants and contributors from our Lagos and Abuja studios and on the virtual space. The incidents of the month of October this year, where young Nigerians took to the street in protest of police brutality and excesses, peaked on the 20th of October, where the Lekki shooting incident occurred. Some say it's a watershed in our history. It is obvious that our policing system is not perfect, but this evening, our attention is not so much on the faults and the problems of the Nigerian policing system, but we are looking for solutions. This evening, we shall also be focusing on the implementation of the new Police Act 2020. The new act provides for the framework for the police force to ensure cooperation and partnership between the police and host communities in maintaining peace, combating crime, and protecting liberties, life, and property. But how can all these be effective? We have a host of experts and key stakeholders to discuss these issues within this 2 hours span of time for you.
Police Act and various dialogues that have been held, including this one on police reforms, the emphasis would have to be on how this new piece of legislation can correct the disconnect between the citizens and the Nigeria police and restore trust for the police. This dialogue aims to, among other things, discuss the changes the Police Act 2020 introduces for the administration, operation, and accountability of the Nigeria police force and how it can trigger change in the approach to policing in Nigeria. We'll also deliberate on implementation strategies and elicit commitment from decision makers on a concrete action plan towards implementation for the benefit and protection of citizens' rights, to highlight post-legislative actions that can be taken by stakeholders to ensure that the law works for citizens and the country at large. Just to let you know that you can join the conversation using the hashtag #PoliceReformNG. Back to you, Sheil.
All right. Thank you so much, Terry. Before we dive into the deep of the waters of this conversation for tonight, let me allow you to listen to the welcome address by the Executive Director of the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC, Mr. Clement Nwankwo.
Hello, my name is Clement Nwankwo. I'm the Executive Director of Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, and we're very delighted to be joining with Channels Television to bring together stakeholders to discuss the issue of police reform. Earlier this year, the National Assembly passed the Police Reform Act, otherwise known as Police Act 2020, which replaced the 1943 law. The Police Act 2020 seeks to bring into focus the issues related to safeguards, citizens' rights, in addition, of course, to several other issues regarding how policing should occur or happen in Nigeria. A lot of this is not known to the public. A lot of Nigerians are asking the question, what is contained in the Police Act and what are the steps being taken to implement it? We are concerned, of course, that since the Police Act was passed, it hasn't been gazetted and steps towards its implementation has not started. All over the world, there are concerns about policing, and Nigeria is not an exception. We think that Nigeria has had an opportunity to ask questions about policing. Nigerians are concerned about their rights. Nigerians are concerned about safeguards regarding their rights, but also really concerned about the welfare of the police, the situation of the police, and how you can improve the police system to deliver on citizens' expectations. This town hall seeks to raise those questions, prefer solutions, and works towards ensuring that in implementing the Police Act, citizens' rights are addressed, the welfare of police is addressed, and a policing system that is well placed to serve Nigeria in the 21st century is put in place. Thank you so much for joining us in this town hall meeting.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nwankwo. I guess you have given us a very good premise to get into the waters. But as we get into that, how much of information do we know so that we can get a sense of what this conversation of tonight will be all about. Let me give you some information that will be handy for you today. So we know at the moment that we have just about over 370,000 Nigerian police officers. That's what we know. Maybe something has changed. We'll probably get an update from the senior officers that will be joining us tonight on the program. The Nigerian police citizen ratio is put at 1 police officer to 450 Nigerian citizens. But that is the standard, or that's the number that we have. But what does the United Nations recommendation stipulate? It tells us that we should have 1 police officer to 450 citizens. That is what the United Nations recommends, but this is what we have right here in Nigeria. Let's make some quick comparison with what is obtainable in some African countries. In some African countries, at the moment, this is what we know, that in Kenya, it is 1 police officer to 1,150 police citizens. And in Tanzania, it is 1 police officer to 1,298 citizens. In Ghana, our neighboring country, it is 1 police officer to 1,200 police officers. Let's get some more information. This is the structure of the Nigerian police as we know it now, based on what the law stipulates and how they administer their affairs. 36 police units are in the 36 states of the Federation. And of course, we know that there are 12 zones and 7 administrative organs in Nigeria. But something happened a few months ago. Precisely on the 15th of September 2020, something that perhaps will change the landscape for policing in Nigeria. It was when President Muhammadu Buhari signed into law the Police Act of 2020, which is a revision and somewhat a very large change in what we know of the original enactment of 1943. And so let's give you a sense of how far we have been coming about the change and the review of our law that guides policing in Nigeria from 1943 to 2018. Look at this space of time, 1943 to 2018, a very long period of time before we have a major change. But up until 2018 and up until now, this is what we know. And this is the series of events that has happened over the Nigerian police law. So let's go further to tell you that in the gap of or some of the errors or the problems you have agitated about as citizens on the Nigerian policing system, these are some of the issues that have been raised by Nigerians and experts, that there are insufficient articulation of the mission of the police. Sometimes you really do not know or put your finger on what the roles of the police, the Inspector General of Police, or what a police officer should do to a citizen. But we see the change when we flip the page. Too much discretionary powers to the police. That's another major issue. Lack of secure tenure for IGP, ineffective and inefficient organizational process, inadequate protection of civil rights and liberties, no standard funding framework as seen in other agency laws. Those are some of the gaps and problems as we had it in the Nigerian policing system. These are some of the innovations that have been captured in the Police Act of 2020. Clear articulation of mission of policing. We're going to discuss that. The IGP to develop annual national policing plan. It does look at this law as giving the IG a clear mandate and how it can operate. IGP to facilitate access to legal support for suspects and detainees in police custody. Activation of police reward fund to exemplary service and gallantry. Police not to earn salary lower than other security agencies when we talk about the welfare of the police officers. And this we have a whole lot of this. But this, don't worry. We have all the time on this program, on this town hall, to discuss all of these issues for you. These are some of the functions that are clearly indicated in the new acts that have been signed in September of this year. So some of the functions that you can see. And of course, people will be asking the types of police officers, the regular police officers, the special constables that's captured in the section 105 to 112 of that new act. And of course, the supernumerary police officers, also known as the spy police officer. These are some of the information that we have for you. We introduced a panel to kickstart the conversation for this evening. But before we do that, there are other issues that have been raised by citizens and a lot of civil society organizations about Nigerian police system as captured in this package. Take a listen to it.
The Nigerian police is empowered to detect and prevent crime, preserve law and order, protect lives and property, ensure law and order, and apprehend violators of the nation's laws and regulations. As part of efforts to ensure the execution of these duties, as enshrined in the 1948 Police Act, the Special Anti-Robbery Squad was set up. Since then, activities of the officers under the unit, perceived as brutal, did not go down well with many Nigerians. The subsequent complaints led to the renaming of the unit as the Federal Special Anti-Robbery Squad. Still unsatisfied with the name alteration, several Nigerian youths took to the streets, calling for the scrapping of the unit.
Following a review of the current developments and in due cognizance of the wide and legitimately held concerns of well-meaning citizens on the existence and operations of Special Anti-Robbery Squad as a responsive and citizen-oriented police force, it is hereby directed as follows. 1. The Special Anti-Robbery Squad of the Nigeria Police, otherwise known as SARS, is hereby dissolved across all formations, the 36 state police commands, and the Federal Capital Territory, where they currently exist. 2. All officers and men currently serving in the unit are to be deployed with immediate effect.
Before now, the National Assembly in November 2019 began the process of reviewing the Police Act, the first ever comprehensive revision of the Police Act since its original enactment in 1943. The new act aims for an efficient and effective police service.
If you ask or talk to many citizens, which I've had an opportunity to engage recently, there's a huge deficit in police and policing in Nigeria. We do not have an effective system of policing when the relationships between communities and the police are defined by fear and mistrust. We want to help them be better public servants by making it easier to remove rogue officers from amongst their midst, because bad police make it impossible for good police to do their work.
The new act seeks to promote and protect the fundamental rights of all citizens, promote access to justice, and adopt community partnership in the discharge of its responsibilities, among several innovations.
If I write a petition today against the NBA president that he's involved in an armed robbery in my village, the first mode of operation will be to arrest the NBA president before investigation starts. What does that tell you? That he's actually guilty. He now has to prove himself innocent.
Although a new act is in place, the challenges of inadequate funding, poor welfare, alleged indiscriminate transfer of officers and men without accommodation, and lack of promotion remains unaddressed by the force hierarchy. One of the demands of the End SARS protesters is improved welfare for police officers. In response, President Muhammadu Buhari approved a new salary structure for the police. Accordingly, officers in the lower cadre earn an average of 50,000 naira, while those in the middle level cadre earn an average of 130,000 naira. Senior officers earn over 300,000 naira monthly. When compared to salaries earned by their colleagues across Africa, it leaves a lot to be desired. For instance, police officers in Ghana earn between 86,000 naira and 296,000 naira, while officers in Benin Republic earn between 70,000 naira and 240,000 naira. Their counterparts in Cameroon earn an average of 89,000 naira and 306,000 naira. The 2020 Police Act has been hailed as a piece of legislation that should birth a professional and efficient police force for the nation. Hopefully, Nigerians can be optimistic that the new act will build trust for officers of the Nigerian police and ultimately engender their cooperation in maintaining peace, law, and order.
Thank you so much, everyone. And let's get started. Well, that gives us a window for us to get everything started. And let me introduce our guest in our Abuja studio. Of course, my colleague, Terry Kumi, is there. We're going to be getting you into the fray and get to our guests to talk. Let me begin with the representative of the Inspector General of Police. Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mr. Leye Oyebade, is in our Abuja studio. Thank you so much for coming this evening. Also, is a former Inspector General of Police and the Chairman of the Police Trust Fund, Mr. Suleiman Abba. Thank you so much, Mr. Abba. We have a representative of the Deputy Senate President, the Special Advisor to the Deputy Senate President on Legal and Constitutional Matters, is a lawyer himself, Mr. Daniel Buwala. We're getting a very good legal representation on this show tonight. And we have the President of the Nigerian Bar Association, Mr. Olumide Akpata. Thank you so much, NBA President, for joining us tonight. And let's get started. And Terry, I think I should shoot the first question, and maybe you can take it away afterward. And let me start with Mr. Olumide Akpata. Basically, the 2020 Police Act, as signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, is to repeal the 2004 Police Act. But in essence, if you can summarize the legal point of view of this new law for us, does it capture the agitation of many Nigerians based on the gaps that we saw in the previous law?
Oh, thank you, Shehu. Yeah, I would say that I would firstly, of course, like to give kudos to those who sat through the process of reviewing the Police Act for the first time in well over 80 years, since 1943. So yes, I think that the act, or the new act, touches on some very key areas. Secure tenure for the Inspector General of Police, like you have mentioned already. Now we have a fixed term of 4 years for the Inspector General. That helps with continuity. That definitely is a good sign, good omen of things to come. So there are other issues, quite a number of other novel provisions, some of which you have already highlighted, Sean. And I would think that all in all, it was a very good attempt at bringing us up to speed, bringing us to bring us to the contemporary space in terms of what policing should be in this era. And I'm not so sure if my role here is to regurgitate provisions of the new act. But I must say, I personally, I was quite pleased to see the provisions in the act on community policing, because for me, this would appear to be the first time at a federal legislative level that there has been a response to the call to bring policing down to the people. So community policing, as contained in Part 9, I believe, of the new act, is a very welcome development. I'm extremely glad to be sitting next to Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mr. Oyebade, who I know we have had many conversations on this particular aspect, because if that particular provision of the act is driven to its logical conclusion, I think that we would have a better police-citizen relationship, which is what we are trying to achieve here. So I'm quite pleased to see that. However, with regard to the new law, forgive me if I am not excited by the new law, if I'm not holding my breath, because our experience in this jurisdiction is that our body of laws is littered with very well crafted and very well intentioned pieces of legislation. But as has been mentioned here already in the run-up to this discussion, implementation strategies would actually be the determining factor in seeing whether or not we have actually we're actually at Uhuru. And for me, that is what I'm quite concerned about. And this cynicism, or should I call it lack of optimism, is, I think you can understand it against the backdrop of the recent occurrences in our country, NSAS protests, etc., brought to the fore that very ever-widening gap in terms of the ever-widening trust deficit between the police and the citizens that they are meant to be policing or protecting. And then again, speaking as a lawyer, I also know that this cynicism is a function of even just the relationship between the police and lawyers. You would be shocked to find out how abysmal that relationship is at the moment, because there's a break. The trust between the police and even the lawyers has broken down. Not to talk about police and the citizens. So I'm a little bit. This was why some of us are a little bit pessimistic. But I'm hoping that if we get our implementation strategies right, we should be able to arrive at a promised land. However, Shehu, before I let go of the microphone, another major issue that is lacking is that in this new act, there does not appear to be a clearly laid out accountability framework. That, for me, is the major concern. The act is full of prescriptions. It's loaded with prescriptions as to what standard operational procedure should be regarding policing. But my team and I have looked through, and we are still trying to find out where exactly there are consequences for bad behavior. Where exactly will we find the rules that govern how the policeman would be held accountable in the absence of whenever he errs. And you see, the trust that we are hoping to build can only be built when the citizen is assured that there is accountability when the police errs. And that, for me, is the reason why the NBA is working really closely with the National Assembly, particularly the House of Representatives, on trying to provide that accountability framework, looking for the opportunity in the Police Service Commission bill that is about to be proposed, where we can have an accountability framework. If, yes, this is what the Law Police Act prescribes. Read the suspect his or her Miranda rights. Record him or her when they are apprehended. Make sure that they have the lawyer of their choice. Yes, this is all well and good. But if this does not happen, what exactly can the citizen do? And we're excited to see the House of Reps come forward with a proposal to look at how we can deal with that omission. Any undertaking conducted by humans cannot be perfect. So I think that we should just step in the gap and help to fill that gap and make sure accountability is dealt with. Another issue, Shehu, is enlightenment. You cannot light a lamp and hide it under a bushel. So it's important that the police themselves begin to enlighten the populace as to what their rights are as contained in this particular act. If they lead that charge, it will help to build confidence. Enlighten the populace, enlighten the rank and file of the police, and to let them know that there's a new dance step, or there's a new music, or a new beat, and so we must change our dance steps.
All right,
So
Mr.
for me,
Akpata, just a moment. I understand that we are due for a break. We'll take a break, and when we come back, my colleague Terry will take on some of the other guests that we have on the panel on some of the issues that have been highlighted in this new law for governing Nigerian police force and the system. Don't go anywhere, everyone. The town hall just got started, everyone.
Everyone is committed to seeing a police force and also law enforcement that will meet the expectations of the Nigerian people. The purpose of law enforcement, the purpose of policing is for the safety of lives and livelihoods of Nigerians. So we're all committed to that, and I think that everyone is committed to it. I don't think that it is the exclusive preserve of any one person or group. We're all very committed to it. The President has also spoken just a few minutes ago about the prosecution of all of those who have committed wrongful acts in any way, law enforcement agents who have committed wrongful acts. I think all these commitments have been made, but we must also understand that it's a process. It's not an event. It's a process. We must all commit to it. Everyone must be interested and must stay focused on those issues. I think the clear message is that there is a government commitment to ensuring that the process of reform is done, that those who have been, that anyone who has been, those who have committed wrongful acts are duly investigated and prosecuted, and that whatever replaces SARS is something that is acceptable, first of all, in its compliance with all of the tenets of the rule of law and human rights. These are all issues that I think we're all very, very deeply concerned about.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us on this special town hall session on the police reform and the new Police Act 2020 signed by President Muhammadu Buhari. Don't forget that you can be part of the conversation. #PoliceReformNG. This is an all-encompassing program in the sense that we have stakeholders, we have studio audience, and of course we have panelists that are discussing this issue. My colleague, Terry Kume, is co-anchoring this two-hour session for us. Terry.
Well, thank you very much, Sean. I listened to the NBA president speak almost extensively on the new Police Act 2020, and I couldn't help but notice that the DIG or Oyebade was virtually nodding all through the conversation, which raises the question, how was this perceived by the police? Is the police confident that this new act will help it in performing its functions?
Thank you so much. A critical look, and if you do a real appraisal of that piece of work, gives a ray of hope, real ray of hope for the people's police of our dream. And I'll say that because it takes cognizance of the rights of the citizenry. More importantly, even when you look at it deeply, gives the right for citizens openly, discreetly, and it also gives opportunity for us to examine that community partnership that we have been begging for, that we have been looking for, that we have been agitating for. Because this is the first time you see, like my brother have identified it, that the Act specified the need for community partnership at the divisional level, at the state level. Not only that, it went further to create where the community will partner in terms of who and who is supposed to be a member of that community that will be partnering with us.
You know, just let me just button here. We have, we'll talk extensively about community partnership and what this new act portends for it. But most importantly, for the police force, what portions of this act gives the police the confidence that we would have an improvement in the police force, especially with regards to the attitude of the policemen?
Okay, responsiveness to the needs of the general public. It's very important. You see, in those days, police have been reactive. With this new approach, we see a new dawn for police to try and be proactive now. Because it makes arrangement for training and retraining of the personnel to be able to adopt new trend of policing. And where did I find that? Made mention critically, when you look at it, it critically mentioned that every point in time we must look at police officers with the idea of that interest that is very important, emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is very key. Democratic policing is very germane in our democratic setting. And these are very much identified in this act.
Very well. Let me go to former IGP Suleiman Abba. You have been in the force and you virtually saw the tussle for who should recruit for the Nigeria Police. This new act stipulates that the Nigeria Police Force, as against the Police Service Commission, has the responsibility of recruit constables and into the Nigeria Police Force and recruit cadets into the Nigeria Police Academy. Why has that responsibility been taken away from the from the Police Service Commission, and what impact will that have?
Well, thank you very much for this very important question. The fact that I was a personnel officer for a good 4 years and a liaison officer between the police and the Police Service Commission, I think perhaps you're asking the right person. And also, in recent weeks, I will say, former inspectors general of police met and took a decision to intervene in this matter. And I happened to be one of those at the time who really interacted with the Police Service Commission to bring an end to this, sort of disagreement. I think the law is not saying that the Police Service Commission does not have any role at all. Now, the role will certainly will be played by the two, the Nigeria Police and the Police Service Commission. If the Police Act now says that it is the responsibility of the police service, the Nigeria Police to recruit, you will come to note that at the end of the day, it is the Police Service Commission that will effect the appointment. So it's a role between the two of them. It's like what happens with the military. The main activities of the recruitment is done by the military. But at the end of the day, the appointments could come from the police council, the military council and so on.
Why is this important now?
Yeah, it is important because, we are living in a democratic era where responsibilities are shared, so there will be checks and balances. In this case, you would also agree with me that the Police Service Commission does not even have the capacity anyway to conduct recruitment. Unlike the case of the police that has the widespread, it could have the opportunity of checking the physical appearances. There are requirements with regards to the physical appearance of candidates, going through their papers, not only just the papers they present, but the police can have the opportunity of, investigating very quickly to see the validity of what they presented.
Mr. Daniel Boala, let me come to you now. There's a portion of this act. I'm sure you understood the process of this act. Act Section 68, subsection 1 says that the police is mandated to take photographs and fingerprint impressions of all suspects who are in lawful custody. The question would have to be, how do we achieve this with police force where many of the stations operate analog systems?
Well, it is one thing, in my view, for us to have some of these provisions, brought to law. It's another thing for the infrastructure that will help the police to actualize some of these provisions. I personally think that it will be a bit difficult unless, if there is a government policy for funding. Because in one breath, you have the provisions of the act stating that the accused person or the suspects, as it were, can elect not to concede. And then in another breath, if he fails to do that, the police officer cannot force him. They will have to get an order to do that. So there are quite a number of issues in the act that sort of re-emphasize or reinforce the rights of individuals, that for the police to be able to protect or promote that, they will need infrastructure such as funding, facilities, technologies, and all of that. There is also the part of the act that now sort of reconcile the police and the legal practitioners who stand as the arbiter between the private citizens and the law enforcement. And if you look at section 5, 6, and 7, it says now it is the duty of the police to ensure the promotion and protection of the rights of the people who are in their custody. So it is by the presumption of this act, it is no longer fashionable for a suspect in the custody of the police to feel like he's convicted already. It is the duty of the police to notify him of his right. There is another part of the provision that says he can even elect not to write a statement. So it's some of these rights that you find introduced into this act will be confrontational if the police is not given the proper training to understand that. So right to remain silent and not to discuss. Right to elect not to confess anything that is necessary for the police if you feel it's going to jeopardize your interest. And the right for the individual to be protected from the police. So in my view, in one breath, we have an act that is introducing and reinforcing the rights of individuals, bringing innovations to the police, like that introduction in recruitment where you will have to examine the psychological and then the mental alertness of that person you are recruiting. So we're going to see in the coming days how in recruitment, for example, whether that is implemented. With respect to relationship in section 6, it says it is the duty of the police to collaborate with agencies of government or private initiatives or individuals that stand as representation of those people under their custody. In other words, if we are going to give a strict application or actualization of this act, when a legal practitioner walks into a police station, he should be seen as a friend and not as an enemy that we often see. Police also is very important to note. They operate to fulfill justice, not necessarily to convict. It means in the course of carrying out your duty for both arrest, enforcement, and prosecution, exculpatory evidence are to be made available to the accused person. Now, once that disposition, and this is my recommendation, because we are now talking about giving enlightenment to the masses, first, in my view, the police officers across the country must be educated to know this development. Because you are likely to find a police officer in Maiduguri when you begin to tell him your right as enshrined in the act, because this is a repeal and replace. It's a new act altogether. He will tell you he doesn't know. So, in my view, the Police Service Commission or the police force should make a handbook where they highlight these new innovations and make sure that every single police officer in the country is handed. Then there should be some form of evaluation where, for example, if certain number of police officers are under the DPO or whatever the administration in the police is, they should be able to assess whether or not they have read the manual, they have read the handbook to understand the new innovation and whether they are willing to carry that out.
Would that be for new recruits or already existing?
In fact, if you look at the act continuously, it may mention of the police officer. So whether it is the existing or the recruit, there should be, it's just like in our law. The minute you are called to the bar as a lawyer, you cannot imagine or you cannot, it is an anathema for you to be seen without, for example, the Constitution or the rules of professional conduct. It is imperative because from when you open your mouth to introduce yourself to when you say, I rest my case, you must be governed and guided by that rules of professional conduct. And if there is any amendment to the rules or to the act, it is incumbent on you to know. And is the part in this act that talks about the relationship that should exist between the Nigerian bar. I feel that the act falls short of saying the Nigerian bar because it talks about representation of individuals and the police. To me, this is the time where the bar will be willing to offer the services in giving orientation to the police if they are willing.
All right, I think Sean has the next question. Sean?
All right, great. Terry, I really love the conversation, the way you've driven around what the new law permits and what it has introduced. But another angle to the new law is the procedure in the stop and search operation. For example, this question is going to be directed at the DIG, Mr. Leyo Yebade. There are clear procedures now, as stated in the law, of what a police officer should do in the stop and search, e.g., of a vehicle. Before a police officer is to take that action, is supposed to indicate his name, police station, object of search, purpose of search. Officer must be in uniform or wear a visible and valid police identity card. During the search, the law also provides that the officer is to seek the cooperation of persons being searched, personal searches to be done by an officer of the same sex and out of public view. Then after the search, there should be a recording and documentation of the search. These are not things that we are seeing in the operation of stop and search in Nigeria, although the law was signed in September. DIG, can you tell us, is the Nigerian police or are the officers ready to take on this task? Have they started?
Thank you, Sheil. It has to do with implementation strategy now. If we really want to go down and see what we are talking about. And I will say that we are ready because the police must move with time. We cannot be static. We must be ready to move with the change. And globally, what is operational is what we are going to do. Let me take one or two examples also. In the administration of criminal justice, in those days, when you talk about going to verify the confessional statement of somebody who has really confessed to a crime, you have the local idea that we normally do that time. We call it trial within trial. But now, the law now says you have to record that person by camera so that there will be no dispute. So we are going to get up to that stage. The provision of even modern equipment, because you know that human resources, very vital in the issue of implementation that we are talking about. So the capacity of the men must be built up and the resources must also be provided. And that's why I'm talking of training and retraining of the men for emotional intelligence and for us to be able to know about democratic policing that is needed in this democratic dispensation. So when you are going to talk about searching, definitely we will get to the level of training our men, stop and search, and they'll be able to know that we will get all the gadgets that are necessary. All the important inputs that are needed will be put in place. Even talking about even demonstration, arresting those that are demonstrating. We will get to the point. The normal thing is to use water cannon. So these are issues that are already coming up, and the Inspector General of Police, we are already looking at getting all these gadgets so that we'll get to that level.
All right.
That
when are we likely? When are we likely to see this new law come to effect on the streets with the Nigerian police officers that we see on the street, and generally? When are we likely to start seeing the effect of this new act?
We have our men that are going trading as I speak with you now. All the departments. Investigation is a skill. You'll agree with me. So we continue to train our officers when it comes to investigation. Now, when you're talking about operation, the operational capability of the men, we have also the men that are undergoing training. You know, we have special forces. And we are talking about even men that are in counter activities to really deal with the space that have been created by the cancellation of SARS. So all these ones that are under training, by the time they come out, and we'll be able to instill in them that need to be civil, to be humane, and to be courteous. Those are the things that we're going to do.
Great.
And we're going to be able to get to that.
All right. Let me go to former IG Abba, and it's going to be about the tenure of Inspector General of Police. The new law has made it very difficult to remove an IG, and since 1999, there hasn't been any IG that has spent up to 4 years, but the new law now provides that a tenure for an IG, which is 4 years, from Mr. Musulu Smith will spend 3 years, Mustafa Balogun 3 years, Sunday Ahindero 2 years, Mike Okiro 2 years, Gbono Onovo 1 year, Afiz Ringim 2 years, Muhammad Abubakar 2 years, and yourself, Mr. Abba, you spent only 1 year. How would you assess this particular section of the law?
Well, I thank you very much, and I'm glad you said perhaps I had the last tenure. I would say. Well, the fact is that it is good that we have this provision in the law, in the Act now. But I must say that it gives the Inspector General of Police an opportunity to really rest his mind and do those things that he wants to do, particularly since every Police Inspector General of Police comes with a kind of different vision on what he wants done. For example, during my tenure, my vision was to have a police attitudinal change was the focus of my administration. A situation where I did a research at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies on discipline in the Nigeria Police, and I was the second person to do it ever since. And I realized that the greatest problems of the Nigeria Police, in particular, that have to do with personnel relationship with members of the public, which is a key anyway to the success of policing. I concluded that the best way to go about it was to do an attitudinal change. And we started, like the MBA, the barrister was saying, the representative of the Senate President was saying, I came up with an idea. The attributes of a police officer. These attributes are mainly about 6. He is expected to be knowledgeable so that he knows what he's doing. The law, he should have a complete or a high-level understanding of the law. He should be above sentiments of religion, sentiments of tribe, sentiments of sectionalism, and so on. So that in the conduct of his investigations and policing generally, he will be above board these expectations or these minuses that we have in our society. Now, I reduced those attributes into a pocket-sized card, encouraging every police officer to memorize it. And believe you me, the effect was going on, because when I was going around, I challenged officers to bring those attributes off it. And I was surprised. Senior and junior officers were really memorizing it. And that's the only way to go about it. Let the person be knowledgeable of what is expected of him first. We also had planned, to launch the attitudinal change campaign and so on. But the 2015 elections was just around the corner. And we said, let's leave the luncheon until after the elections. But you all know the elections took me away because the party in power lost the elections. And when they were looking for scapegoat, I happened to be the scapegoat. But coming back to your issue, yes, the Inspector General of Police can serve for 4 years, but you should also be mindful of the fact that there is a proviso there. If he cannot perform for reasons clearly defined or seen, there's nothing that stops the authority from, replacing him.
Very well then.
And I think that is the best for the society.
Well, let me go to the NBA president now. The Section 32 of this new act prohibits the police from arresting anyone based on a civil wrong or breach of contract. And if you go down to Section 36, it also prohibits the arrest of any person in place of a suspect. There is no portion like this in the old act that suggests that they can do any of these things. Why was it necessary for us to enact such a provision for the police to understand that they were breaching human rights?
Well, you see, hindsight is 20/20, right? So it is a function of how the police has operated before now, where the police would appear to insert itself into relationships between citizens that ordinarily ought not to attract or the intervention of the police. So I think it's a very welcome development that these provisions have now been properly articulated and very unequivocally stated in the body of the law, that you can't, in civil matters, as between citizens, the police ought not to insert itself. I mean, it has almost become a feature, a permanent feature in our police-citizen relationships, where you find the police almost becoming an arbitration tribunal, delving into matters that are purely civil in nature, and then also, just generally going into matters of contract between individuals. I mean, we all know that this happens regularly. And again, it may just be because, as we have highlighted here, that the policeman probably is not aware that this is not his turf, or that is not his or her turf, or does not fall within his or her remit. So now that the law clearly states it, and like the Inspector General has said, if we carry on from where he left off and ensure that the individual who is in the force is clearly aware of what his responsibilities are, is knowledgeable with regard to what the law is, then I think that would, it would limit, or if not totally eliminate, instances where you have the police going ultra-virus, as it were, going out of their comfort zone or their prescribed zone. I think it's a very welcome development.
Very well.
But Terry, if I may, again, maybe you can understand why I'm a little bit reticent in my review of the law, because it's fantastic that the law has all of this. But you have already heard on this panel, it is important that the issue of funding, that the issue of training and retraining must be addressed. Those are the critical issues, right? Funding, the welfare of the policeman or policewoman, right? Then orientation, right? As Mr. Bola mentioned, the chap who is in the police station in the hinterland, is he aware of what is going on? You understand? So I think it is critical. You touched on an issue just now about even from the recruitment. An issue as critical as recruitment is still caught in the crosshairs, right? That matter, I believe, is sub judice, so I really don't want to go into it. But if an issue, so we are overladen and overburdened with bureaucracy. As far as the police is concerned, if you start ticking the boxes, Inspector General, Minister of Police Affairs.
Let me butt in here. We're almost going on a break. Yeah. You did mention some important aspects, training, funding, and all. I think another important thing would have to be sanctions for erring police officers, which I think would come to eventually. Let me go to Mr. Boala just before the break now. There's now the issue of private detectives in this new act. What does that portend for us as a society? And I think the most important question for many people will be, should the police be the ones to vet these detectives?
Well, by the act, it is the police, because it is expressed that they will have to make applications, and the police will have to look into their profile resume and be satisfied. Probably they will even have to do some background checks. If they are satisfied, they give them the necessary license to do that. The introduction of private detective, to me, is in one part a cure to the problems of the number of police officers we have in the country. Because now when you bring in private participation in this endeavor, you're likely going to find a number of police officers who are attached to private individuals or even public officers. You find a private individual may have up to 15 or 20 policemen, guarding him. And by so doing, you have close to 35% of the totality of the police officers in the country managing the affairs of private individuals. With the introduction of private detectives, you're going to find that businessman might find more freedom in engaging private detectives because he believes with them he can have effectiveness of service than making use of the regular police because of the fear that they are either likely going to be influenced or they're going to compromise his case. To me, it's a good development. And we see that in different jurisdictions around the world. And introduction of private detective and operations and the activities provision of services will bring a competition to the Nigerian police because you are going to find, in terms of intelligence gathering, maybe private firms are going to be well ahead.
Thank you so much. At this point, we'd like to say a big thank you to some of our guests. As we're going to the next segment, thank you so much to Suleiman Abba, the former IGP and Chairman, Police Trust Fund. Thank you for coming. Thank you also to the NBA President, Olumide Akpata. Thank you. And of course, Mr. Daniel Buala, who is Special Advisor to the Deputy President of the Senate on Legal and Constitutional Matters. We'll take a quick break and we'll be back with a policy reform in a short while. Stay with us.
I came to the Senate today and briefed them on the concept of community policing. If you can remember, last year we sensitized the whole country on the need to adapt community policing in the country. And the concept is to give policing back to the community, let the community take the initiative in identifying the problems that are there that can lead to the commission of crime. And then we work with the community to solve the crime. We believe that everybody comes from the community. And the community, in the community, you know who and who is there. So taking policing back to the community will help in reducing crime to the barest minimum. So I've explained the concept of community policing to the Senate, which involves partnership with communities, and there are various communities. You can have traditional institutions as a community. You can have a National Union of Road Transport Workers as community. You can have the media as a community, and various forms of community that we need partnership with. And when we talk about the partnership, we're talking of problem solving. We need to solve problems that evolve in the community. What we mean here is that we scan the community to find out what are the indices that can lead to the commission of crime or the crime that has been committed already. We analyze the problems and then we look for solutions, that the responses that are available, then we deploy resources to deal with the problems.
Thank you so much, everyone, for staying with us. We've been reviewing the Police Act 2020 signed by President Muhammadu Buhari earlier in September. And now we're going to be focusing on that law, but on some other aspects. And this is going to be about rebuilding the trust of Nigerian police for the communities and also building community partnerships. And have some panelists also to discuss this with us. Let me begin, I guess, from our Lagos studio. We have Mr. Innocent Chukwuma, is the Director of West Africa at the Fund Foundation. Thank you so much, Mr. Chukwuma, for joining us tonight. And Ms. Gloria Egbuji, she's the ED of Crimes Victims Foundation, CRIVIFION. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And our Abuja studio, we still have the DIG of Police, Mr. Leye Oyebade, there with us. But also, we are now being joined by the National Commissioner at the Police Service Commission, Mr. Romy Mom, and also a retired Deputy Inspector General of Police, Mr. Valentine Ntomchukwu. Thank you so much indeed for joining the conversation today. Perhaps I should begin the conversation, and let's for a moment, let's hear from a female voice on the panel today. What is your view, especially as regarding the perception of the police, of an average police officer or the Nigerian police force with an average Nigerian citizen?
Thank you very much for having me in this discussion. The new act, the new 2020 act, is a very welcome development in the sense that it had been so long. But when I look at the relationship between the police and the average citizen in the streets, I think it's something we have to think deep about. Because as good and lofty as the expansion of the act and what it brings is, there's a whole lot of need for people to think about the individual citizens in the society. Because when you look at the criminal justice administration as it is, you tend to see that the criminal justice administration is looking at the victims, who are the citizens, as the states, making the citizen, the average citizen in the society, to see the police as not their friend. Because when you take the offense that is committed against a citizen as offense against the states, the citizens are not very happy usually. So the relationship between the average citizen and the police is not very cordial. And the reason is...
it's against the popular saying that police is your friend. In the real sense, what we see is what's the reality on the ground.
Well, that saying is just a saying because for me, even when you say it to the police, they will laugh. Police ought to be your friend. But in the real sense, people don't think that police is their friend. But I believe that police have been doing so much. But the reason for me is the fact that they lumped the whole treatment of the security or the protection they give to the average Nigerian citizen as seeing the citizen as the state, which is not the truth. The moment they are not looking at the victims of crime, which the police are actually working for, looking at their individual pains and trauma in the society, there's no way they're going to appreciate the work that police is doing. And I will explain it in this way. The new act is talking about involving the community. Good and fine. Who are this community? The offense that is actually committed within the Nigerian state is committed against a person. So that person is a victim of crime, which the entire criminal justice system is working for. So it will be good for this new act to work, for them to go deeper into taking care of the individual. What is there for the individual victim of crime, who is very useful at both pre-trial, at the trial, post-trial of the criminal justice process. Yeah. So once this act is to work much better, they have to go back, because there is a lacuna in the sense that the act did not actually, it didn't actually, even though people will look at it as, yes, the criminal justice system is working for the victims of crime. But I see it in the sense that the victim of crime, this act will go deeper to specify what is there for the individual who suffer in the hands of the perpetrators of crime.
Yeah. So let me bring Mr. Chukwuma into the conversation. There's been a lot of agitation. Aside the October agitation from a lot of Nigerians, people have talked about community policing, and we've seen what is happening with banditry, insurgency. We are really having a lot of issues as regarding security in the country. But does the new act treat and deals with the issue of community policing as being debated around the country?
I would say it tried, right? When you look at the provisions of the new act, a lot of people describe it as community policing, and it bears the name community policing. But in my view, it tends towards communal policing than community policing. And
what are the differences?
What do I mean by that? Because if you look at all the messaging going out, it's about in communities, you interact with traditional rulers, you interact with religious leaders with a view to nominating people who will be in these committees. And when you deal with that level of leadership in the community, it will tend to privilege people who are territorial in their understanding of community, or people who are faith-based in their understanding of community. The concept of community policing, the community there looks at every resident, the diversity, that the structure itself needs to reflect the diversity of the community before the community can have confidence in such a structure. And for community policing to also work effectively, it is not a project. It is a philosophy, it's a strategy that needs to permeate and pervade the police. It requires decentralization of authorities and powers. Too many things don't need to start and end at force headquarters in Abuja. The average police officer, the constable on the street, should feel sufficiently confident in the powers that he or she has to engage his or her community, find out the common problems plaguing the community, identify common solutions to them, and jointly implement them. When you have the police force as currently structured, very hierarchical, 13 rank structures, if you look at from the constable to the IG, hierarchy is something that kills community policing. So the act itself should have gone far in reducing this hierarchical structure, because as long as you have all this, people will keep fearing you. So that's one thing that needs to happen. But also what ultimately will bring community members to the police is what we call 3 R's in the literature: report, respond, resolve. If people report crime to the police and they don't respond in good time and resolve it to the satisfaction of the complainant and the complaint against, you can preach community policing till eternity, it won't change. And another significant thing is that interaction, the nature of contact and interaction between the police and the communities they serve. You and I encounter the police every day, but if you look at the nature of that interaction, is what we call involuntary law enforcement-oriented interaction. Members of the community do not have sufficient time, non-law enforcement interaction, to get to know the police very well, interact with them so that they can work together. And that's what community policing is supposed to bring about.
I'm very sure some Nigerians will go quickly to Abuja studio, but clarify for us. A lot of people are talking about restructuring, and under that umbrella is the issue of state policing. People are agitating for that. So some people might be confused as to what community policing is and state policing. Is it the issue of authority or administration in the discharge of policing in those communities? Give us a sense of how this law treats it. Does it really treat the problem of policing at the grassroots and the local level in Nigeria? Community policing, state policing.
I think they are two vastly different concepts. Community policing is a police-controlled and directed process. Police reaching out to the communities, realizing that they don't have all the resources, all the powers, all the knowledge to solve common community problems. But when you talk about state policing, you are talking about policing authorization and provisioning in terms of layers of government. What authorities do they have to establish their own police service?
Allowing the state governments to have their own.
Precisely.
But this law does not provide that.
No, it's vastly different.
So there's still a lacuna.
Precisely.
Yes.
And I also have my own challenge with state policing. What I'm actually calling for is nodal policing.
What does that mean?
It's realizing that police is a tripod that involves the state, the private sector, and the community. And each of these nodes needs to have a role. The law talks about the police having authority to register private guards, but it should define a role. What is the role of private security industry in security provisioning in the country? What is the role of the community? If they want to operate outside the framework of community policing, is there a role for them? Does Nigeria have the resources to fund an effective and modern police service? And the answer is no. So we need to look outside the box to find a framework that can address our safety and security needs.
All right. Let's go to our Abuja studio for a moment, and I'll allow my colleague Terry to take over. But I guess we should get the conversation started with the retired DIG Valentine Untomchukwu. Terry, my question to the retired DIG is going to be on how badly has the reputation of the police and average police officer been in the society. You've been away back into the community, so you can have a feel of what things have been. Since you left in the last few months, what is the reputation of an average police and how bad are things presently?
Thank you, Sharon. What I want to say is that, you see, the police can be what the society, when they perceive the police to be bad or that the reputation is bad, yes, that is because they perceive the police expecting much than what the police can afford to do. When you see a police officer, the hood does not make a monk. What is in the police man? To whom much is given, much is expected. To whom nothing is given, you don't even expect anything from him. Word. So when a police officer is not properly equipped to do his services, to render services to the people, if you want to know the image of a police officer, it's that of a constable you meet every day, not the IG, not the DIG, not the commissioner of police. What is the disposition of that particular officer? Does he have what it takes to render service? To give the mandate given to him by law, is he equipped to do that? So if he's not, then you don't expect any reputation whatsoever.
I think I can take it from here, Sean. I'd like to follow up on what you talked about in terms of relationship with the citizens. In modern day policing, with the level of interactions that the citizens have with the police, do you think it is still necessary to have policemen brandishing rifles that are loaded when interacting with citizens who are unarmed on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, that is the individual. When a police officer does that, that's against the rules and regulations of the police. He is trained to hold his rifle down, to point it down, even when he's seated or whatever. But when you see him flaunt it anyhow, then that particular officer needs to be what? Supervised.
No, my question is, should a policeman move about with a loaded rifle when interacting with citizens? I'm talking beyond direction of the gun, weapon now.
No, he's not supposed to. It's wrong, fundamentally. He is not supposed to do so, and I don't think majority of them do so.
DIG Oyebade, do you agree with that?
Now, you take it from the situation that he has found himself. Appraise every situation. A policeman who is addressing a crowd, a riotous crowd, definitely he has to be at alert. A policeman that is invited to a situation, let me give you a scenario. While I was commissioner of police in Oyo State, by the time you get to where the members of the road transport union, 10 bodies are already on the ground. So what is the policeman going to do when you get there? You are already at the scene. The situation is already tense. Your own life also might be in danger because they are using a lot of weapons. So you have to appraise each situation as it is. But in every situation, this is the normal thing. A policeman will assess the situation before he knows what to deploy. Whether you use your rifle, or whether you use your smoke, or whether you use your words, or whether you just cancel the men and let them depart. I think that is the beauty of this new act. It's saying that it's going to develop police professionalism. So when you are talking about professionalism in the Nigerian police force, is a very key role that we want to play now. Professionalism in terms of investigation. When you are talking about investigation, you need handwriting experts. These are things that we need when you are talking about you detecting fraud cases and some cases that are very sensitive. to identify who signed this signature or not. You need ballisticians, specialists that are specialized in identifying what rifle was used at what point in time. This is professional policing. You need pilots. We need professional pilots. We need helicopters for area surveillance. So when you are going to develop the police, you also talk about the marine police, where you need special police officers trained to, when there are boats that have capsized or there are issues on the road, or even when we went for this Ondo election where we need to monitor from the riverine area, policemen are supposed to be specialists.
DIG, if I may come in here, I think I'm just trying to put you back on course. The conversation is more about the interaction between unarmed civilians and policemen.
Okay.
And many have suggested that it would be best if a policeman, moving about in public. You have mentioned specific situations which are peculiar, but a policeman moving about in public, interacting with citizens, has no need to have a loaded rifle.
I agree with you.
But many have also said that it would be because that the police has lost respect from the citizens. Does it bother the hierarchy of the police that the police uniform doesn't have the respect that it should have from the public?
It must have the respect, and that is what we are doing now. That's why I was talking about the professionalism now. And you see, a policeman is not just that person that wears uniform. It's about who is he. Forget about the training. Does he have a name to protect? So many people condemn the police, but most people don't encourage their people to come into the police. And you need the best in the police. Like I've said it at the last place, I was not encouraged to come into the police. But here now, those that discourage me, they call me now when they are in need. Let us bring the best into the police. You need high quality men, not the best, not the bad eggs, not the wasted ones, not the dropouts in the police. So the quality of men is very important. And that's why we need to get it right from the recruitment level. So we need to go to the root. When you want to check any problem, you want to check the root of it, go down to the root. So the recruitment process must be re-examined to get the best from society and then train and retrain and equip them. And then the training now is what is very important. When you have the equipment, you now train them to be able to do what they are expected to do. That is when emotional intelligence comes in that we're talking about. You are giving somebody rifle. He should be able to know discretionally, even if it is loaded, he should be able to know when he uses it and when not to use it. And the professionalism there is how many times has he gone to the range professionally to handle different types of weapons. So the need to train and retrain and get the best material in terms of human resources and train them to be able to face challenges of modern policing is very important.
Let me draw your attention to a statement by the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He said that it is very difficult to respect a policeman who was not properly dressed and probably doesn't look the part. How is the police going to address that?
We are getting our kits. You see, when you ask some policemen to go and buy their uniform, I think it's a misnomer. So for now, the IG is taking it seriously. We kit them. We have a quartermaster because it is how you address that you'll be addressed. So your appearance depicts who you are. And so the constable, the sergeant, and it is even well entrenched in this act that the police officer must be kitted. Every account treatment should be given to the policeman, whether the working dress, there are other dresses that we have for drill and for other assignments. So the ability to be able to get the police to put on the best outfit is very important. That is what we're doing now.
Very well, then let's bring in some of our studio audience now. But just to let you know that you can join the conversation online using the hashtag #PoliceReformNG. Let's start with the co-convener of the Situation Room, Esther Uzoma. Let's get your contribution or question, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Now, so much has been said about this Police Act. But this law, we are proposing that it functions in an environment where ethnic sentiments have already formed parallel police forces. Can we seriously talk about this Police Reform Act without talking about ethnic policing, can we discuss it really in isolation of the Amotekons, the Hishbas, and then certain other apologists, sentiments of men who have decided to police communities and states? Can we really, talk about it and isolate these ones, because it appears it's the elephant in this living room, everybody knows it's in this studio, but we don't want to, because the Nigerian police, we must begin to know that we must humanize the police. It's not, the police train and tell them. They are human beings. They are fathers. They are brothers. If you look at them in that light, you will now know how atrocious the Nigerian state has been to the police. Where do you train them? Have you seen our police colleges lately? Have you seen what they eat? And so after training them in that place that looks like a prison, we actually bring them to the city center, to Asokoro, to police. That is the hate they come out with to impress the society. So there are a lot of issues besides the gender question, of course. All right, but we must look at this. How are you going to reform in a vacuum? People are leaving Nigerian states.
All right.
Forming other allegiances.
All right, let's have the executive director of CISLAC now, Awal Rafsanjani, quickly, if you may.
Thank you very much. I think for us, one of the key important aspects, or some of the key important aspects in this new act, is the provision of the police complaint unit, response. Many Nigerians, they are not aware that, we actually have this mechanism. And I personally, I went to the police and we have been working with that unit. A lot of complaints are received and being addressed. There's need for police, to ensure that across all the country, all the states in Nigeria, this particular unit, which is now in the act, is properly functioning so that the grievances and the concern of the citizens against some of the officers that have been found guilty doing things, can actually be addressed. In fact, even the NSAS problem that we had, if that unit is in existence and is effective, it will have helped to, address certain issue. The second thing is that one of the problems that we have in the police, which has to do with the, lack of transparency in the promotion of the officers. You see somebody spend 10 years in the police, no promotion. It is very demotivating. And if in this implementation of the new act, if that aspect of promotion, when it is due, is given without you have to know a big man or woman in the police, I think that would be, important. The third thing is to agree with, the DIG that the recruitment process must be addressed. The commercialization and privatization of the recruitment process has to stop. Sir, you are very much aware that a lot of Nigerians have to pay bribe to get that form. A lot of Nigerians, even after the recruitment, the training, they have to pay bribe to be posted to what they call lucrative places. These are things that are causing problem, and if police can take this very seriously, I am sure Nigerians will respect police. There's nowhere, if you take away police from the street, everybody will be scared.
Thank you
so much.
Yes,
we condemn police, but we need them. So we need police, and we just need that the character, of the way and manner in which the police function need to be addressed, and the citizens must also respect and compliment the police. That's the only way to go. Thank you.
Mr. Awal Rafsanjani, thank you. That's as much as we can take. We'd like to continue the conversation in Lagos. Sean?
All right, then. Great reactions we're getting there from the studio audience. We have some response here also. Mr. Malaka Ogumadu is a lawyer and a rights activist. He has some views and questions.
Well, good evening. Mine is simple, but it has to do with the possible challenge that I personally anticipate, even as beautiful as the act promises to be. And that is from the standpoint of implementation. There is so much resemblance between this Act 2020 and the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015. The ACJA came into effect on the 15th of May 2015. That's exactly 4 years ago, or a little more than that. There are copious provisions with respect to admonitions on the part of the police not to go into civil matters or contracts. There are provisions prohibiting them from arresting by proxy. All of these are now repeated in the 2020 Act. So what is the guarantee if we have recorded between 2015 continued and repeated violation of these provisions regarding the rights of citizens? That is the one. The second concern I have has to do with the issue of the security of tenure as now protected under the new act. That is not far-fetched. I mean, the benefit of it is well known. However, like one of the panelists pointed out, that is made subject to a lot of other conditions. And we know how the politics of this country also play. Assuming without conceding that an Inspector General of Police is appointed towards the twilight of his tenure as a police officer regarding the year of retirement and the period of time he has to spend, either by way of age or by way of service. Then finally, I like to get some light around the question of punishment. This new act recommends some punitive actions against police officers who are involved in malfeasance. In another breath, it recommends a reward system, a reward mechanisms. What in the operation of the police moving forward is there to guarantee the funding of that reward fund, which is the actual name in the 2020 Act, to incentivize and encourage those exceptional police officers? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ogumadu, for your thoughts and your views. I understand now that we have another participant on the virtual space, Bola Abimbola. Let me get your view on what has been said today, if you have questions too.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. For me, my major concern is on the area of definition and context when it comes to the community policing. For me as a person, I want to see a structure that gives premium to strengthening police-community relation in the areas that will help to enhance, quick crime detection, prevention, intelligence gathering, but more importantly, a community policing that is technologically driving. But when you go to most of our police stations today across the Federation, you will agree with me that we don't even have the least technology that we could use to fight crime. So my question will be, what can we do moving forward to ensure that across our police stations, we have technology that will help us to detect crime before they actually take place? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Abimbola, for those thoughts. There are lots, actually, that the police, we need to hear from the police. But I understand that Mr. Chukwuma has some reactions to some of these thoughts.
Yeah, I think the question he asked actually links up nicely with the earlier one Malaki asked, that we have the ACGA in 2015 and we have this 2020 Police Act. What is the assurance that they will actually be implemented? And it links, which is actually where I wanted to respond to an initial comment by my good friend DIG Leye Ajibade, that they are ready, that they have been going on training and all that. I think if we want to be frank and implement this act effectively, we need nothing less than 1 year to prepare for the commencement of this act. There's a provision in that, in the new act, very important one, that talks about annual policing plan from the force headquarters down to the various units. And what that means, you take your time to plan. What are the priority crimes you are going to be dealing in a particular year? What are the things you need to enforce them? Where will the budgeting comes from. And all this needs to be wrapped up before you commence the act. I'm happy that Kakovi, the private sector initiative, has earmarked, I had read over 100 billion naira to support this. We need more money than that. We talked about photography, we talked about recording video and audio. All those things need to be procured. We talked about training the police, the reorientation. If we rush into commencement of this act, it's going to end up like the ACGA. Since it has not been gazetted, let's give ourselves 1 full year and mobilize the entire society using the tripod approach I talked about. Government has a role, but government cannot fund it alone. Private sector has a role, community has a role, so that come a year today, we say on this date we are commencing the implementation of this act, and this is how far we are prepared to go ahead with it. Without it, we'll come back here again to talk about the failed opportunity.
Let's roll to Abuja studio again, and I'm very sure that the DIG, Mr. Oyebade, has lots to respond to some of these issues people have raised. Terry.
DIG, there are some questions directed at you.
When you look at the content of that, the act is specific about the National Strategic Plan. And what it says there is that the Inspector General of Police should take inputs from the Commissioner of Police, from the Zonal Assistant Inspectors General of Police, and the Deputy Inspectors General of Police, looking at the crime that must have been prevalent. When we crime map the country and we see where the shoe pinches, that is from all those inputs that is able to put a national strategic plan. So the new law is saying it, and we believe that it is going to work.
All right.
When a policeman is well motivated and is well equipped and well trained, we should expect the best from such a person.
All right, just before we go, for retired DIG Valentine Tomchukwu, what are your closing thoughts, especially relating to remuneration for the police?
Yeah, I think it's very important because I can hear some of them saying we are working at the end of the day, what is our take-home pay? Even ordinary citizens out there, they will ridicule the police. They will say, how much do they pay you? I can pay you. And you can say, it's a common refrain that the police are poorly paid. Why should they be poorly paid? Let me tell you, in UK, the average police inspector earns higher than a very senior permanent secretary. The Prime Minister once was asked sometime, why is his salary lower than that Metropolitan Police Commissioner? He said, because that man takes risk. Okay. That man provides stability. Up to today in UK, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner earns higher salary than the Prime Minister himself. You find out this. So why are we ridiculing the police? Why are we not ready to pay them a commensurate salary? Why must everybody come up and say the police is poorly paid? Why? This is a job that requires courage.
This
is a job that requires confidence. If you are poorly paid, can you have confidence?
That's a very good place to leave it. I'd like to say thank you to my guests. It's been an interesting 2-hour conversation. DIG Leye Oyebade, DIG Operations, Nigeria Police Force. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And of course, the retired DIG Valentine Tomchukwu. Thank you so much also for your time.
Thank you.
I'd like to say thank you to my guests as well. And Seun, just before I get back to you, here are my closing thoughts. And that would have to be that based on the hope that this dialogue has helped to create an understanding of what modern-day policing means to the police and to the citizens, the rights of citizens in dealing with the police, and the need for community support in tackling crime. I'm also hoping that the next time a citizen encounters a policeman, there would be no fear or intimidation in the mix. It's back to you, Seun.
Terry, thank you so much. As we wrap up right here, I think we can create some 30 seconds to get the closing thoughts of my guest here, right here in our Lagos studio. Let me begin with Mr. Innocent Chukwuma.
Thanks. I think we need a Marshall Plan for the redevelopment of the Nigerian police force. We need to give ourselves a 1-year time frame to put all the enablements in place. Police needs a committee or a task force for the takeoff. Government needs a task force, private sector. We need to, for the first time, pay attention to the police needs. And we have an opportunity before the commencement of this act to get it right. If we don't, we'll come back here again to talk about missed opportunity. I would like to end on that note, restating it again.
All right. Mr. Guji.
Well, I would like to end up in saying that the Nigerian police need a lot of funding, and they are very important. We can start by providing enough funding to support this, and then making sure that the police build their capacity enough to try to have a buy-in from the public, so that the community that feed them with the information they need to fight crime will be close to them. But time is now for government to pay a lot of attention to police funding and police training. The training department of Nigerian police must be made very active, because as we have it today, it is not active. They have to have training and retraining of Nigerian police, and the federal government must put in a lot to make sure the police is funded to do their work and then get appreciated by the public. If not, we'll just be where we are. That's my closing remark. Funding, training, training. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Gloria Eguji, the ED at Crimes Victims Foundation. Thank you so much for coming tonight. And also, Mr. Innocent Chikuma is the lead director, country director of West Africa Foundation. Thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thanks a lot.
I must also thank our studio guests here in Lagos and our Abuja studio. Of course, our virtual guests also. Thank you for listening and watching and participating in this town hall. Thank you so much indeed. Well, citizens have now been activated. Their consciousness has now been awakened to the reality of the fact that we need a functional police system in Nigeria. Thanks to our partners at Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, PLAC. Thank you so much for collaborating with us in this very important session. And on behalf of the crew at Channels Television, thank you everyone for watching. I'm Shion Kimbalwe. Bye-bye.